welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a private reading, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics with respect to relationships and natal astrology, like career, life's purpose, and so on, transits. You can check out the video description in my video right here, and I will leave my contact information there. You can email me for a full list of reading options and prices. And also, I have started memberships on this channel. If you're interested to get more in-depth, detailed information on astrology, I suggest that you check out the video description. Again, I have left a video there, a short video, where I describe the membership options. And also, last but not least, I have a tarot channel, which I will be linking also in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. So if you're interested in tarot, go ahead and check it out. Maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, so today's topic is going to be on something that I haven't planned, I haven't announced again, but it's rather something that comes out spontaneously. Now, if you have been watching my channel for a while, you know that I'm that kind of a person that is quite erratic. And like when an idea comes up, I just can't get it out of my head. It just, I go Inception, like that movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. So in any case, the idea that has been swirling around my head for a while now is the topic of the Sun-Ketu conjunction and the effect that it has psychologically, specifically on men in a male's chart, and how that affects their ability to relate and how they behave in relationships. Now, I'm going to start on a personal note by saying that probably my biggest crush in my 20s was a man who had Sun-Ketu conjunction. He was also happened to be a friend. I won't get into details, but probably my biggest romantic interest in my 20s, considering the fact that I am borderline asexual, was a man with Sun-Ketu conjunction. Now, I'm not basing my entire, observation on this conjunction just on that one person. But recently, a lot of things kept resurfacing. I started conversing with some people online. Two of them also have the Sun-Ketu conjunction. And then the last of it was like, the cherry on top of why I wanted to talk about this topic was that recently I saw Russel Brand talking on the Diary of a CEO podcast on YouTube and talking about his life. I haven't watched the full thing, to be honest, because I'm not exactly his number one fan. I always thought he was a bit weird. But when I, listened to at least part of the things that he was talking about, I started getting a little bit of a weird, similar vibe to this person that I had a crush on that had Sun-Ketu conjunction. And then I looked up his horoscope. Thankfully, his date of birth and his time of birth and everything is online. And what do you know? He also happens to have the Sun-Ketu conjunction. He actually has Sun conjunct Ketu and Mercury, Russel Brand, in Taurus. In addition to other things. So, and to me, it seemed really, like he was all over the place. He talked about how in the first half of his life, he was obsessed with, being famous, that he had a sex addiction, that, he went through tons of relationships. Basically, he really seemed very scattered, very erratic, and that actually seems to go hand in hand with what I have noticed so far with respect to the Sun-Ketu conjunction in a man's horoscope. And I really want to explain why I think this is happening. Now, as you probably know, especially if you have watched a lot of my videos, Ketu is a malefic. It's also called the south node of the moon. And the legend has it, according to Vedic astrology, that Ketu and Rahu are part of the same they're made of the same thing, but they're two opposing polarities. So, because according to the legend, they were each of them was a part of a demon in the shape of a dragon that was made immortal, and it was slayed and was condemned to spend eternity. So the head is immortal but doesn't have a body. So the idea is that it's constantly hungry because it keeps eating but nothing reaches the stomach. And then the rest of the body which is Ketu, is floating around without a head. This is why Ketu is associated with lack of logical thinking, lack of rationality, whereas on the other hand, Rahu is associated with perpetual reasoning. I mean, the tendency to be hyper-rational. It's associated with many things. I'm not going to get into everything, but on topic here, to keep it on topic with respect to, what I'm going to get into, Rahu stands for being very rational, looking for results, being very materialistic, and always hungry, quote unquote, on one level or another, because they're never really satisfied with what they get. And then Ketu, on the other hand, is seen as very intuitive because they have an ability to see without seeing, so to speak. So it has to do with the immaterial world, with letting go, with disconnection. It actually even rules dead bodies, So it's also why the only sign that Ketu co-rules is Scorpio, which is the sign that rules the 8th house and death and transformation. And so Ketu has to do with everything that is spiritual, that is unseen, and also to some extent things that are irrational, that don't really make sense. This is why, you have to have a strong Ketu to be good at astrology, for instance, to be really good at astrology, or to any kind of metaphysical, occult sort of thing is kind of ruled by Ketu. Now, it doesn't mean that every person who has a strong Ketu is going to be into astrology. Of course, you have to look at multiple things in order to see that. But just to try to explain the difference between Ketu and Rahu, right? So Ketu has a lot more to do with intuition, with the world of the unseen, with abstract concepts, I have done a video, and I will be linking it in the video description, where I talked about the Ketu archetype in depth. I called it Archetypes of Ketu. I also mentioned there that, for instance, Albert Einstein had a strong Ketu placement in his horoscope, just like many other brilliant minds throughout history. But I won't digress too much. I don't want to get too much into Ketu. However, and I'm also going to be linking this video in the video description as well, I did a video a while ago where I talked about difficult childhoods and aspects in the natal horoscope that show a difficult childhood. And I did mention there that Ketu tends to show loss. So Ketu is a negative influence, basically. So when it comes to the Sun-Ketu conjunction, because the Sun represents the father archetype, it also represents other things in your life. With respect to medical astrology, it represents your vitality, your life force. With respect to the spiritual perspective, it's one of the main indicators of what your life's purpose is. For instance, right? It also, again, medically represents the heart, the cardiovascular system. So all of these things actually can be taken into account when you analyze a aspect such as the Sun-Ketu conjunction, because all of these things, these areas represented by the Sun, can be weakened by Ketu. But with respect to the main topic of this video and the behaviors of men with this conjunction in their horoscope, the main thing that I want to look at is the influence on confidence, self-confidence, and self-esteem, because the Sun, and these things go hand in hand, as I have said in other videos. I'm pretty sure that I've also mentioned this in the video that I talked about, where I talked about childhood issues and bad childhood experiences, that the Sun archetype representing the father actually confirms the observations from psychology that when you have a strong father figure, generally that shows a person who is going to have a healthy sense of self-esteem, a healthy sense of self-confidence growing up, because it basically means that you have a strong father figure that was there to teach you about the world, to help you test your abilities, to mirror you, give you a strong sense of self, encourage you to take on challenges, all of these things that are necessary in order to build a healthy sense of self-confidence and self-esteem. But when the father figure is absent, and you see that in the horoscope with aspects such as Sun conjunct Ketu, to a lesser extent, it can also be when Ketu is single-sidedly aspecting the Sun through the 5th or the 9th aspect. But especially with a conjunction, all right? This is the strongest because the conjunction means that these, first of all, that the Sun and the Ketu are mutually aspecting one another. So they become intertwined in their symbolisms and their energies, right? Everything that they stand for becomes merged and unified somehow, that they are intertwined, so you can't have one without the other. So what I often have seen, as I have mentioned in that other video about childhoods, is that when you have this conjunction, irrespective of gender, you tend to have an absent father figure. Whether this is a father figure that was literally physically absent from the child's life, so this could be, cases where the parents get divorced and the father never sees the child again. Or it could be, of course, children that are born of single mothers, where sometimes they never even meet their fathers, or they meet their fathers when they are well into adulthood, right? So the father is not physically there to help the child figure himself or herself out and develop a strong sense of confidence. Another potential outcome of this aspect could be that the father passed away when, the child was relatively young. And this is actually the case of one of my current online friends, for instance, who has this Sun-Ketu conjunction, that his father passed away in a sudden accident at the age of 7, right? So you see this mirroring in the horoscope. I mean, as usual, as I've mentioned in many times on my channel, that there's a direct link between your horoscope and the way that your life plays out and how it influences, and psychology subsequently. So it shows that the father figure is absent one way or another. Another example, like for instance, this person that was my big romantic interest in my 20s, this guy, his father was never particularly interested in him, from the things that he was talking about. His father was a workaholic. He was away from the family a long time. He didn't have a strong connection. And then when he was around 20, his father filed for divorce after he had spent, I think, something like 5 years working abroad, basically. So he barely saw his father, and then one day he just decided to get a divorce, and so he was completely out of the family, out of this guy's life. And in each of these situations where you see this in the man's horoscope, and again, I have to link this to psychology, because there is a difference between, a man having this conjunction and a woman having this conjunction. There will be a different impact, just as there will be a different impact, because it's the same thing as the differences in impact from, a woman having an absent father figure and versus a man having an absent father figure. They're going to be different impacts, right? So just briefly, when it's the woman who has this conjunction, right, it shows an absent father figure. That could, again, translate into similar things, low self-esteem, low confidence, but it's not going to maybe play out exactly the same in relationships, because women are socialized differently, and women have, in society, they have to develop differently. They have to rely on different characteristics in order to get by. But for men specifically, if they don't have this father figure, it really translates into crippling insecurities that later tend to manifest in a toxic way in relationships. And just another thing is that this conjunction, especially in the first period of life, it's said that Ketu reaches maturity at the age of 42, which, again, funny enough, also rang true for Russel Brand's existence, because he, up until the age of 40, as he said himself in that podcast, he was obsessed with fame. He was obsessed with getting validation. And if I understood correctly, again, he didn't have a father figure when he was growing up. He was raised by a single mother. He was raised in poverty. And he actually was open about the fact that he was desperate for attention. And he also had other things in the horoscope that further exacerbated the, bad behaviors that were stimulated by this negative conjunction of Sun-Ketu. I think he also has Moon-Mars conjunct in his horoscope. So that also tends to make a person impulsive, aggressive, and hypersexual. That's another thing. On top of which, if I'm not mistaken, his conjunction of, let me check once more. Let me see. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So his conjunction of Sun, Mercury, and Ketu happened because he is still alive in the 5th house of his natal chart, which means a proclivity towards having a lot of affairs. Also in Rohini Nakshatra, I see Rohini Nakshatra here with the Sun and his Sun and Mercury being in Rohini. Not so sure about of the Ketu. I'm looking at his tropical chart, so I'm translating the positions in real time, so I cannot know exactly where the nakshatra of Ketu is, but it's definitely a conjunction. His Ketu is falling in Taurus, right? So the 5th house again, and Mercury, by the way, in the 5th house by itself, would tend to bring, a lot of love affairs, because Mercury is a very kind of childlike, scattered sort of energy. And then you have it in the 5th house, which is the house of romance, and is also in Taurus, in Rohini, which is a very a nakshatra and an energy that is very much focused on materialism and sensuality and beauty and all that. So it would make a lot of sense that he ended up going through, sex addiction. On top of that, also having Moon, Mars, and Jupiter conjunct in Pisces in the 3rd house in his horoscope, which probably also gave him a strong ambition to succeed, but also gave him, because the 3rd house and because of this, triple conjunction, which is very powerful, Moon, Mars, and Jupiter. By the way, Moon Jupiter is a Gachkestri yoga, which is said to bring a lot of prosperity and wealth, but of course many people have this conjunction. Okay, I'm not going to get into a full analysis of his horoscope, but I just wanted to, I thought he was an interesting character, and what I was going to say is that in the first stage of his life, he went through a lot of confusion. Like he himself said, he kept chasing fame, and not a surprise, again, Rahu in the 11th house of gains and fame and all that. So he kept chasing fame and validation and all that. And then as he got older, the more he realized that he was not happy, that he was empty, and started to move away from these things and moved more towards things like, as he calls it now, spirituality, awareness, and so on and so forth. And yeah, which is actually more in line with what Ketu energy is like, right? So that makes sense. So he is more into his Ketu now in a healthier sort of way. He found a healthier expression for that, Sun, Ketu, Mercury energy, and eventually married and had kids. Presumably he's not still a sex addict. I mean, according to his, to what he says, who knows? But, the bottom line is this energy is, especially in a man, gives this insecurity that comes from the absence of the father figure. And another thing that you see, and by the way, this could be a thing even coming from multiple conjunctions, but this is definitely one conjunction or multiple aspects or configurations, right? Because this is not the only conjunction or configuration that you can see in a horoscope that would suggest low self-esteem. But it is one of the strongest, right? And it's specifically on this topic of the absent father figure. And what I've seen is that generally these men who grow up without a father figure, even the women as well, but again, it manifests differently, but sticking to the men here, is that they seek validation from other men, right? So they become even more obsessed with getting attention and getting admiration from other male figures, whether it's like other father figures or sometimes male peers. And again, this leads to problems in relationships. I've seen this time and again. I actually saw this in the horoscope of an acquaintance of mine who came over to me for advice on astrology, who had this conjunction in his horoscope, and eventually their relationship ended. They were together for like 6 years because this guy couldn't get over the effects of the entourage in his life. So his friends, in other words, and I would put friends in quotation marks, because these guys were pretty much manipulating him. And, these friends basically had something against this woman. And if you ask me, it was boiling down to jealousy, because this woman in question was very good looking. She had participated in beauty contests, and they were constantly trying to drive a wedge between this guy and her. And they were trying to control him and saying things like, she's not good enough for you. And she found out these things from, an acquaintance of an acquaintance, whatever. I don't know how she found out this, that they were trying to basically drive a wedge between them, and that they were trying to turn his head away from her and saying things like, she's not good enough, we can find you a better girlfriend and stuff like that. And this guy eventually allowed the friend circle, quote unquote, to basically be more important than his relationship with this person, and they ended up breaking up. And this is not an uncommon situation where you see these men who care more about what their friends think than what the girlfriends think or what their wives think or whatever. And that's coming from, that psychology of the absent father figure, where they spend their entire lives, impressing other men, like I said. And it translates into all kinds of problems unless these men reach a point where they are self-aware and, let's say they go through psychology and understand themselves. Unfortunately, oftentimes you will see a lot of negative expressions like that. And generally, actually, because the driving force for, allowing the entourage to rule your life or putting your friends above everyone else is that it comes from this deep wound of low self-esteem. And usually it can manifest into things like, power plays. It can manifest into things like wanting to control the partners that they are with, because it comes from this deep seated insecurity. And another thing that is really interesting here is that you will see actually these guys can even become narcissistic, because even though they have this very deep insecurity, they try their best to mask it, so on the surface, they can actually come across similarly to men who have Sun conjunct Rahu, for instance, right? Except that's a different kind of energy, right? You don't have an absent father there, you have a toxic father, more likely, right? But the outcome is the same in the sense that these men actually can come across as overly masculine, right? And they can really be attractive to many women because they try to overcompensate their inner insecurities by coming across as very sun dominant, So when you think about sun qualities, those are Leo qualities, right? So leadership abilities, physical strength, being protective and tough and domineering and the leader of the pack. So you often see men who have the Sun-Ketu conjunction actually coming across as very leonine on the surface. But when you start to get to know them, the more it becomes obvious that they are very, very insecure. And it causes all kinds of problems, like I said. And last but not least, a common problem that shows up in relationships, and I've seen this again in horoscopes that I've analyzed in different situations, different relationships that I've looked at, because I've come across people who have this conjunction quite a few times, especially men. Another thing is that, and this actually came to me after I watched a video by Teal Swan. I think she called it, I don't remember what she called it, but it was something along the lines of somehow people with low self-esteem, how it's a paradox. They're in this kind of like catch-22 situation where, for instance, if they want to join a certain community, and the community takes them in, because they have low self-esteem, they automatically view the community as less than because they have accepted them. It's a really messed up situation, but oh my God, when she explained that, I was like, and this is something that kind of intuitively, I think a lot of people know. I know for sure that I knew it. It's just that I'd never heard it explained like that out loud, and it really hit the nail on the head, because especially when it comes to these kinds of individuals where you have Sun conjunct Ketu, this is so obvious. And some of the two people that I know with this conjunction, the men, actually were in this situation where they were chasing women, who were not, at first maybe were kind of, resistant to the connection, and at first they're very confident in chasing and, approaching women and whatever. And then as soon as the woman starts to kind of like warm up towards them, right, and starts to accept them and says, okay, let's go on dates, and once they get to that point where they actually feel, okay, this woman is actually interested in me, they immediately lose interest. And that's in my mind, I think to a large extent comes from the thing that Teal Swan explained, where, because they have such low self-esteem, it's like the minute someone likes them back, they feel like, okay, this person is immediately lower quality in their eyes because they have accepted them somehow, or because, it's a really messed up thing. And this is definitely not purely from astrology. That's why I mentioned the Teal Swan video. So this is something that has to do with human psychology. And like I said, there could be multiple configurations in a horoscope that show low self-esteem, low confidence. But I've seen that actually with people who have this conjunction, that this is a pattern that they have where they only chase people who are somehow unavailable. And, as soon as the person becomes available, they're like, okay, not interested anymore. And they move on to the next person. And yeah, this is something I want to also say, though, that, so if you're interested in a person who has this conjunction, you need to take into account the fact that this person is going to go through a lot of confusion, a lot of ups and downs. And also because the sun represents not just confidence, so it doesn't just represent the inner world and vitality and all of that. It can also represent, social status, visibility, right? Because the sun is the king, so it represents authority. So these people could have, by the way, issues with authority figures. They could have a lot of struggles in the early parts of life to establish themselves, to establish a certain position. So there's a lot of struggles in their lives, particularly up until the age of 40, like I said, because like Ketu reaches maturity at the age of 42. And you also want to look at what else is going on in the horoscope, because if you see that the moon is also afflicted, right? You could have, let's say, Ketu conjunct the moon and the sun. So already when you see that, you can see, that this person probably felt abandoned by both parents, and by the way, this can also translate into a person who has this constant need for attention and validation, and which is, again, it's counterintuitive because Ketu will tend to make a person inside feel very insecure, very, how should I put it? Rejected even, or just unseen, because there's a lack of validation when they're growing up. But they constantly compensate by sometimes creating a persona that is very extroverted, very, over the top, very social, constantly jumping around. And that's another thing, speaking of jumping around, when you have this conjunction, again, unfortunately, and this goes hand in hand with psychology, because, when you have one or both of your parents who are absent, either physically or emotionally, it could actually lead to severe depression, so it's really important for them to stay active, to, get involved in different activities and to basically do things that keep them outside of their heads, keep them involved. And of course, this is also, by the way, it's not all bad, because there are a lot of talents associated with this conjunction. They have a lot of intuition. They have, a lot of a talent for research. They can be really good at research. But, especially, like I said, in the first half of their lives or so, they could really struggle to find their niche, to find their position, and that could lead to a lot of inner discontent and a lot of, also what it can bring is a lot of confusion, similarly to Rahu. So it can bring this confusion of like, they're not really sure which way to go, either with respect to career, with respect to relationships. So what I've seen a lot of the times with these people is that, and I'm especially focused here on the men, because again, this is about how the men are affected by lack of a father figure more than women. And it can lead to, these people becoming very hurtful towards others, very destructive, actually without even realizing it or without intention, because, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But yeah, these are all things that I think are important for women, especially to understand if they're interested in these kinds of men who have this conjunction. But also women who have this conjunction, of course, they could have all kinds of issues as well, similarly with respect to confidence and, self-esteem issues, because it does, again, translate into an absent father figure. So all of those things can still be true. It's just that they can manifest differently, right? So for women, it's not necessarily, actually, yes, in a woman, it could also bring this tendency to be, you know, for lack of a better term, a pick-me, you know. So, you know, these kinds of women who become obsessed with impressing men because they haven't had a father figure or something, and it puts them in this energy of like, you know, they want to get a lot of male attention and a lot of validation. So it could lead to promiscuity. That's another thing. I've seen this like conjunction leading to promiscuity, but again, I think this comes from, on the one hand, you know, this crippling insecurity and constant need for validation, but you want to also look at what else is going on in the horoscope in order to see this. And on the other hand, it's there because Ketu is such an impulsive energy. That's another thing. See, Ketu, unlike Rahu, is not a very rational energy. Some astrologers actually go to the extent of saying that Ketus are incapable of logical thinking or something. I don't agree with that because, again, you want to look at what else is going on in the horoscope. But it is also true that Ketu can bring a lot of impulsivity, and the more Ketu dominant a person is, especially early on in life, they could not be the most rational. They're not capable of, you know, making the most rational decisions. And they could end up, you know, throwing themselves headfirst into all kinds of situations that are destructive to them or others, right, without thinking about consequences. That's why Ketu is kind of related more to Mars energy, whereas Rahu is related more to Saturn energy, right, similarly in energies. But yeah, this is pretty much what I wanted to say. So I thought it was really interesting to talk about, and I think it's something that is worth analyzing. And I think for people who have this conjunction, as well as other strong Ketu placements or conjunctions of Ketu to other planets, it's really important for them to, you know, take time to analyze themselves and to meditate and to keep a structured lifestyle in order to minimize the effects of this Ketu, you know. So don't dabble into things like conjurings and stuff. That's another thing, because like Ketu can really bring this interest in the supernatural and all kinds of things. And some people who have strong Ketu placements can really get into things like conjurings and you know, all kinds of like occult stuff that will only further damage their minds, really. And yeah, it's important for them to stay clean. By the way, another thing is this Ketu, just as the Rahu influence can cause addictions of all kinds, you know, because there's a tendency of escapism going on with Ketu energy, right? And again, it goes hand in hand with psychology, because if you have a lot of childhood traumas about, you know, one of your parents missing or being abusive somehow, or, you know, sometimes again with Ketu conjunct Sun, it's not necessarily true that the father is absent from the child's life, but you could have a father like that who, you know, like especially in the past, it was a thing of applying this attitude of children must be seen but not heard, or like, what is it, must be heard or not seen, something like that. It was like this attitude of basically neglecting kids, you know. So you could have these father figures who are maybe physically there, but they never actually did anything with the child. Like they never shared any kind of activities. They didn't encourage the child. They didn't really build up the child's confidence, right? So that translates into having similar traumas as someone who never had a father to begin with, or, you know, whose father passed away when they were young, right? So yeah, it brings all kinds of these painful memories and traumas that can lead a person to get into addictions. And another thing is, because Ketu shows detachment, it can lead to them, you know, suffering so much in their early lives that they become shut down emotionally. And, you know, oftentimes, again, especially early on in lives, the closer they are to the time of the trauma, they can be very emotionally shut down, so they can be emotionally unavailable or even disconnected from their own emotions. And you especially see this if Ketu is also aspecting the moon or Venus, right? But even, yeah, with the sun, it's mostly all of the issues that I talked about previously with respect to self-esteem and confidence, right? Those are the main issues that are going to show up. So, all right, this has been pretty much what I wanted to say, and I hope that you have enjoyed it. And if you have, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel and click on the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. Also, if you're interested to find out more about memberships, check out the video in the video description. And if you're interested in a personal reading, yeah, check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. And you can email me for a full list of options and prices. And also, last but not least, if you're interested in tarot, check out the video description as well as the pinned comment. I will leave a link to my tarot channel there. And if you're interested in tarot, go ahead, check it out. Maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you for listening.